We are good. So last time we definitely talked about taking these pieces apart, and obviously you should be well on your way to at least making the topography, if not already. Now I do want to talk about the next assignment, so I might as well put it on Miro and go ahead and open it as well. Or maybe just open it, because Miro does take a lot of stuff. Let's go to my documents, SAC. We'll go to computer graphics, 2024, exercises, and of course, exercise number 6. So yeah, let's take a look at it. So a model always needs its drawings. So of course the title of our observation deck, and it does complete this project for us. So as we wrap up our study models, it is best not to get lost in the madness of our digital file, as you can see actually right behind it, of our design process can lead to. For our next exercise, you are assigned with taking your digital models and transcribing it as we have done before with previous assignments. In the next tutorials, we will be also adding Adobe Photoshop to the workflow and add a touch of context for the project to fit in just as the studio project would require. However, for this exercise, you have creative freedom and is always encouraged when exploring the model. So in this case, it's not a real place. If you want to put it on the moon, by all means, let's Photoshop it on the moon. However, let's be as realistic as possible. Let's make it really look like it's on the moon if we go that route. However, it could be in the mountains, it could be in San Pedro Springs Park in San Antonio. I'm not really mutually exclusive about it. However, our final drawings for this will be our floor plans. So it says plans plural because it would be ideal to at least get the first floor and of course the top floor, right? So to kind of see that observation deck. Some of you guys may have more simplistic or more complicated. I'm thinking of Luke's where it'll just kind of look like a triangle again. However, some of you guys of course should have some varying differences, but just asking for 2 of those. Honestly, once I show you this tool, you can make many. Of course, one section, long or short. Of course, it's a square, so kind of just pick a direction. Process diagram, so this you should already have, right? This is actually exercise 4 and exercise 3, right? Where we actually did a little abstract diagram. We maybe showed like the abstract model, maybe before it had stairs. So really maybe re-looking at that diagram. And then last but not least, on 11 by 17 portrait, an exploded axonometric. Right. I also wanted to mention that the section and floor plans should also be on a portrait 11 by 17. Of course, our rubric, craft and accuracy, line weight, and creative efforts, just as always. And a little bit into our schedule. So obviously today we have the topography model due, right? That would be ideal. Not that you have to turn them in, but it would be nice to at least see where you guys are at. And then of course what we're doing now is introduce exercise 6. Next time we'll work in class, and actually the second half of the class I need to teach Alex Gonzalez's graphics course, so I'll be out for about 30 minutes on that one. However, next time we'll do a Miro check on Tuesday and of course work in class. And by week 13, so I mean don't get me wrong, all of this is due April 11th. Right, so we do have a big holiday coming up, obviously this week. It doesn't really affect our class. It's kind of funny. We get the kind of the same amount of holidays between our class. However, it does affect our studios and obviously our Monday, Wednesday, Friday schedules. Anyway, let's get right to it. So yeah, as you can see, I have a very complex digital realm model. I've got a lot done. I've started taking things apart. I started making diagrams. I have extra copies of extra copies. Thank goodness I have this extra copy. Because in the next step, I could really disregard a lot of this. Obviously, I don't need my first exercises anymore, so I'm going to go ahead and hide those. I don't need my tutorial space of what I was doing last time, so again, I'll hide those. And my computer's already running brilliantly faster. Really, for this next exercise, I just need this piece. So I'm going to go ahead and hide all this and hide all that. I'll go ahead and make another copy just because, well, I might mess this one up. So again, never a bad idea. I've never gone like, oh man, you know what, I made too many copies. next time I'm not going to make so many. Like, I've never had that conversation with myself. So again, I've always appreciated the ability to not mess up, right? And not have to do things over and over and over again, right? Especially if I mess up in the physical realm. Like, I don't know about you guys, but I don't know how many times I've messed up a part and been like, crap, I got to make this part all over again, right? Anyway, it happens. So I have my piece, and you know, I have a couple of things that I need to do. So I need floor plans, I need a section. Obviously, I think number 3 is kind of taken care of. I've already done that work. I maybe need to remake 2D it or something like that. And an exploded axonometric. So that exploded axonometric, I will have to put into Grasshopper and, of course, put together. So I don't know. I can knock that one out first. It seems pretty simple to me, especially if I have everything layered and I'm good to go, right? It should be actually a breeze. So I don't actually have all my layers together well, so it won't be a breeze for this tutorial, but for you, it should be okay. Now, if I have things grouped, that should be, of course, helpful too. So I'm going to, of course, group maybe just this portion. In your case, you can really just isolate the layer, right? But that way I can actually start to make an exploded diagram of some sort. Now I'm just going to kind of fake it till I make it. I'm just going to, you know, kind of pick a view. As we know, we got to establish something of distance. That way we can put this basically into Grasshopper. Maybe the next piece that I have is, I don't know, let's see these grids. That'd be good. See which ones are the grids. Hey, Trinity. Trinity. It's our next assignment. Welcome. We're just making an exploded diagram. Might be a review. But yeah, let's take a look at, I don't know, I kind of like the stairs there, kind of involved. But since I didn't organize my layers, I kind of have to select things one at a time. Again, this is kind of just the sake of tutorial. Obviously, you shouldn't have this problem because you're nice and organized. But I'm essentially just holding shift and moving some of the elements out of the general way so that, well, I can make an exploded diagram. That looks pretty interesting, not too complex. And maybe I get the grids out of there, right? Maybe these vertical planes, I don't know. I can take them out horizontally. Why not? All right, if that's my kind of view, I'll take them out that way instead. That looks pretty sweet. Now let's get these guys out of here. Got to be very careful about selecting things just because I didn't organize my layers. Actually, this would be a good time to organize my layers because now they're all separated. So I don't know, maybe I want horizontal grids versus non-horizontal. Maybe I want to leave those together so that's really easy to view. And maybe that does it. Maybe that's kind of my exploded diagram. We'll save that. Man, again, I'm just going to make a copy because, well, not only do I need to actually change my layers, but, you know, this is kind of ideal. Anyway, let's go ahead and go to Grasshopper. We're going to go ahead and load that military projection file that is, again, located on the Google Drive, just in case you don't know. Has our little default. Usually it's actually in here, but these are actually all tutorial files, so I'll need to find that file again. Actually, I think it was because I was in Rhino 7, so now I'm in Rhino 8, and I do need to load those again. But really, the exact same process. Last time we used a brep. That was a little bit easier. Of course, we'll select everything in the model. In my case, just all of this. And of course, give it that brep. So right-click and set multiple breps. Of course, it'll practically freeze. But it'll create that projection model that we want. That way, when we look at it in top view, looking pretty sweet. Now what's nice about this method is, well, I can change it instantly. So I might actually have to get another view and again make sure that I'm selecting the right model just because I do have a couple copies. But what's nice is as soon as I change something here, it will in fact change this part. So I don't know, maybe that's too much overlap. So I'm going to take that piece and move it down. And again, it's going to freeze and sort of recalculate that. And we see that it shifted. Right. So again, a really awesome tool. And again, save this for the rest of your life, because you will of course need it again, and people will ask you, how did you come up with this? And you can charge them even, right? Be like $5. Right? Anyway, just kidding. Give it to them for free, but let them teach you something that you don't know too, right? That's at least the way that I do it. If I teach you something, you teach me something. But yeah, there's the axon, so check, right? I won't go ahead and make that 2D, just for the sake of time and things like that. And I'll go ahead and delete this model so we don't get too confused. But yeah, we can definitely make the axon. So the next one, I'm gonna need the floor plans and the sections. Obviously, I'll want those with a full model, right? So maybe I'll leave that one for the axon. And I can go ahead and lock it even, so I don't accidentally mess it or accidentally select it even. You can actually change your lock settings. So in your preferences, you can make it change color when it is locked versus when it's not. I found that out in Rhino 8. That's a pretty useful tool, by the way, because most of the time it doesn't change color. However, in Rhino 8, it does. Some of you guys already do have Rhino 8. I haven't gotten Rhino 8 for the Windows guys, but I am working on it. So, next thing we need to do is a clipping plane. If it's still called that, let's go ahead and make sure. Yeah, clipping plane. So in our case, the first corner of a rectangle. So it's basically asking for a rectangle. So let's of course give it one. I'm gonna go ahead and type in rectangle, not record animation. And basically make my floor plan first. So realistically, that is kind of my plan view, or at least the plane of my plan. Clipping plane, and essentially I'll just click on that plane. Now, interesting enough, it's going to apply it to everything in the model. So just, as you can see, even stuff that's locked, right? So it's really just kind of a view, if you will. But the way that it's controlled is I'll take that plane and of course move it. Oh, actually, apparently it makes its own little plane now. That's kind of cool. And it even puts a little marker for it. That's adorable. Yeah, probably can't see it so well. But clearly Rhino 8 has some differences. And that's okay. We have to start with the plane, I guess, but then it looks like you can actually click on this new clicking plane tool and of course move that with Gumball in order to make, ideally, a floor plan, right? So I don't know, maybe this is my first floor, quote unquote, and it starts to become very apparent where that break line of the stair is, and it is really useful in terms of let's face it, making some plans for my studio models. I can't tell you how many times I've had a professor go, okay, we've seen your concept model, we've seen your design sketches, let's produce some floor plans and sections, right? That's usually something that a studio professor says. So how nice it is now to make the three-dimensional model first, and of course now derive our floor plans, sections, and really anything, of course, from this digital model. So I'm going to go ahead and select this one. That looks great. I'm going to go ahead and select everything. Now, I don't know what the clipping plane does actually in terms of what happens when you make 2D with it. So let's find out. I'm going to go ahead and add it to my Make 2D selection. I'm going to go ahead and make sure that I'm in the top view and Make 2D. Sweet. We got a floor plan and it's looking pretty good. Right, it's definitely got some of the section cut qualities to it. However, nothing's post shade, so clearly we're gonna have to do some a little bit of drawing or post production before we go into Illustrator or Photoshop, right, for our elevation or our section. I didn't actually put an elevation, but realistically, your section should have, of course, some elevational properties to it, right? Just because everything won't be being cut. However, we got a floor plan that's looking good. Now, the real question is, can we gumball this plane? I bet we can, and it looks like we can, so I'm just going to hold shift, and bam, make a section. Probably the only one flabbergasted is Jackie, just because, well, let's face it, she's right in the middle of D2 and probably having to calculate this stuff on her own. So yeah, how wild is that? That we can make a section really by the second. Right, we can make multiple sections. Realistically, we should probably cut through a good portion of the model and maybe somewhere in the stairs to sort of reveal that circulation. So I'm gonna kind of just move about until I find something that's noteworthy. I have a feeling it's going to be at that edge stair for me. Yeah, and that's looking pretty sweet. That way I can get, you know, some sort of quality about that. Obviously it's going to reveal some of my faults in my model, so that's always fun. But again, I can make 2D and of course fake it till I make it and redraw some of those pieces. But that's looking pretty cool. I like it. I could probably even go with 2 sections, but for the sake of tutorial, I'll just go ahead and do 1 today. But that's looking pretty sweet, so I'm going to take the whole thing. And again, make sure that I'm in the right view of the section that I want. So I do need to make sure it doesn't look like I have the view that I want. So I have the right, I have the front. So now it's definitely either the back or the left. And it looks like I almost had it. Looks like it's going to be the left. Sweet. Or wait, did I actually have it? It is the front, never mind. False alarm. Make 2D. Of course, now we should have our section. As long as my make 2D layer is good. Yeah, my make 2 layer is good. Did I not hit enter? Oh, is it still going? Dang. Alright. It's a big make 2D, I guess. Oh, we'll let it do its thing. Yeah, I mean, I guess there's a lot more complexity to that. 98. 99, maybe? Make 2D can take a while, especially if you have a ginormous project. A lot of things going on. But it made 2D perfectly well. However, as you can see, there's a lot to fix. But what's nice is, you know, it got some of the other qualities, such as like where the floor plan is or where it should be. Obviously, it got some stuff that we need to trim off and so on and so forth. So, not too bad. So we got a section, we got a floor plan. Obviously, I need more than one floor plan, so you'll know what to do there. But let's go ahead and post-produce these a little bit before we get them into Illustrator. One of the first things I, of course, like to do is put it in some kind of scale. Now, it does say I do have a particular scale. So it says 1/4 scale equals an inch. So what am I going to do? What do I know about my piece of paper and my true model? So again, this is kind of a review, and again, this is probably one of the most common things I do in every project is, of course, scale something. However, by rule, at least by my rule and what I was taught, is that anything made in the digital realm is, of course, 1:1. So this actually represents a true size model, even though it looks like a little dinky drawing inside of a computer. It really is 48 feet by 48 feet by however tall it is. So I need to make a piece of paper that is, of course, the same. So in my case, I need to do 11 times 4 because, well, I can fit 4 feet in 1 inch. So that would be 44 feet, enter. And 17 times 4, which, can somebody help me out? Or let me get my calculator. You know, all throughout the 90s in school, they used to tell us, you're not going to have a calculator in your pocket when you grow up, so you need to know how to do math. Lo and behold, we have calculators in our pockets. Anyway, 17 times 4 is 68. I should have known that one. So we'll do 68 feet. And as you can see, it kind of has the proportions, well, technically it does have the proportions of a tabloid 11 by 17 piece of paper. Now, by default, you may notice, oh no, it doesn't fit on an 11 by 17 piece of paper. What shall I do? Right? Well, make it the best of your ability. The topography won't fit on the entire by 11/17, but your model should. And let's face it, you can, of course, chop off the little bits and pieces of the topography that we don't need. So I'm going to center it as just as much as possible. I mean, I don't even mind sort of the asymmetricalness of my plan. I think that's fine. And it gives me plenty of white space to either title it and put the scale and the graphic scale and everything such like that. So definitely not bad. I'm going to go ahead and take my Make 2D and explode it. Just because by default I did have everything grouped. But now everything's exploded, at least for the isolated line. Now some of these are still grouped, so I would technically have to ungroup them. But again, I want to kind of do this first. That way I have a lot easier of a time and I could just switch layers and line weights in Illustrator. But of course, doing this process will save you an immense amount of time. And as you can see, our model does fit on the 11 by 17 as well. However, I do need to still chop some things up, so on and so forth. But yeah, we have 1/4 scale. It's pretty big, right, to say the least. I might make that 1/8, but 1/8 seems too small. I'd leave it at 1/4, just because the model, as we know, is already 1/8 scale. So, but yeah, it's looking pretty good. So obviously, I'd want to trim this up, trim, and get rid of the things that I don't need. And obviously this could take a majority of my time, but guarantee it will take less time in Rhino than it will in Illustrator. Of course, a little post-production. And as you can see, some things are still grouped, so I'll go ahead and ungroup them. That way I can get rid of the things that I don't need. I'll keep the edge of the topography just because I think that kind of helps the drawing. Definitely not bad. So we got some layers. Really what we need here is poche, maybe some labels, those stairs, and maybe what's happening there. It does seem like I'm missing some of my stairs. Not sure what's going on there. Oh, my topography lines. It does seem weird. I might want to remake that. Definitely double check, because it looks like it just didn't make the stairs or something. I don't know. I might be looking at it wrong. But clearly we should have some stairs there. So I don't know. Let's take a look at it. See what happened. Clipping plane. Go ahead and rotate that again. Obviously I want it the other way. Oh. Too far. There we go. But perhaps since this is grouped, maybe I need to ungroup it. And go ahead and try again. Wait for it. Today, Junior? I don't know, maybe Make2D's just having a field day today. There we go. Now it actually made the stairs. However, it looks like it made all the stairs. Perhaps my clipping plane is in the wrong spot. Oh yeah, it is getting the whole thing. And it doesn't seem to be changing like it did in our section. Interesting. Could be because I'm recording. I do get kind of graphic anomalies like that. Hopefully yours shouldn't be the same case though. However, nope, I did select the right model. There's the clipping plane. Interesting. It doesn't seem to be affecting my top view. I could reset it. No? Try to render view, but definitely seems like it's still getting everything. Interesting. Especially since it's not really controlling everything. It might be honestly different. Let's try something real quick. Let's take this out of rendered. And of course the reason I'm doing this is just in case you run into, of course, the same issue. Of course, show you how to fix it. Let's try a clipping plane again. I wonder if you can have multiple clipping planes. Or if there's custom depth. No, there might be some different options, right? 3-point, vertical. Oh, it should work. Okay, so apparently you can have a clipping plane in multiple views. And that would explain it. What's interesting is this one is, of course, controlling the top view. That's kind of interesting. Either way, definitely showed you how to fix it. And, well, that's kind of interesting. Clipping plane used to be kind of a universal thing, but now you can do a different clipping plane in different views. I mean, I guess that's kind of useful. Yeah, kind of. I don't know. I find that extremely confusing. Maybe just because I'm used to it being sort of one universal thing. But that's okay. Obviously, we'll just make another clipping plane when we need to produce floor plans. Not a big deal. But that's looking pretty good. Unfortunately, we can't see it, though. Unless you hide this one. Let's see. Man, that's annoying. Actually. Because then how do you... Well, I guess you just have to look at it in that view. Anyway, that's... If anybody finds out, of course, a better way. But clearly you can kind of see it changing. So let's make 2D that one, just so we have something to poche for the tutorial today. And we'll go ahead and get rid of that one when we can. Obviously, this shouldn't be an issue for Rhino 7, so it'll be kind of a universal clipping plane. So. Whoa! We used to have this this teacher who loved seeing stuff like that. He'd call it the digital glitch, and then he would make us turn it into architecture. Really wild, but not what I want today. Please don't freeze. Nice. Anyway, let's just get into it, because obviously we need to hatch some stuff, right? So I could go ahead and actually take the whole thing, type in hatch, select boundary mode, right, and really get in there. I've noticed the boundary mode has changed a little bit on the hatch, so you actually have to type in hatch first without selecting anything, and then select boundary mode, and then you can actually click on these little isolated curves, right, and of course fill those in. Once you press enter, you can of course make them solid or gradients or whatever have you. But yeah, now it's post-shade, and you definitely want to do this, of course, before going into Illustrator and Photoshop, right? Don't get me wrong, you can do this pretty easily in Photoshop, but honestly, it's just quicker and faster in Rhino. And you get a base file that, well, if I need to laser cut this, I'm already ready to go. Again, there's a lot more to it than just why we draw it in Rhino just for fun or accuracy, is because, well, I don't know exactly what my professor is going to ask me. He might want an exploded axon, right? He might want a force perspective if he's Chronodal. He might want something rendered out in Photoshop if he's Barrett. So again, this is kind of that universal tool we want. So yeah, we got something hatched at least. Let's get the rest of it hatched. Now that we have our hatch and boundary mode, we should be able to really just click on these. And it's kind of nice. It's like a fill in the bucket tool. So essentially I just need to go and click on what I know to be hatched. If you don't know, you might have to take a look back at your section plane and go, oh yeah, I'm cutting through that, I'm not cutting through that, and so on. Right? Some of these, yep, definitely cutting through. And even arguably I left that one solid, so I guess I am technically cutting through it. But let's go ahead and just say those are pochade. Just get all these little pieces. Really start to make something out here, right? Really starting to look like a floor plan. Obviously I'm missing my stairs, but that's okay. Go with solid, and yeah, that's looking pretty good, in terms of floor plan. Man, can you imagine if I had to sit there with the marker, Jackie? Or again, we can use these tools to the best of their ability. Let's go ahead and take a look at the section, because this is of course the one that I do want to actually do a little bit of work in Photoshop today. I'm going to go ahead and trim, obviously, the stuff I don't need off. And of course, I can do that all at once, so anything, of course, touching that boundary, just go ahead and get rid of it. If you got lines overlapping, of course, you can go towards the right and get those lines. However, if they're all grouped, you'll have to ungroup everything. I would probably want to identify my floor plan, right? So I'll probably leave that there. Go ahead and trim this stuff off. I think you can actually just type in TR as well. Oh, might want to lock that in place. But yeah, basically trimming up things, getting rid of maybe things that are kind of in the way. That's actually looking pretty good. Those are my stairs. However, it looks like maybe, okay, they're in the back. However, it does seem like I'd want to trim those out, right? I could really get nitty gritty with this. Trim and make sure that the topography is above. Anyway, this is what I mean by ease, because let's face it, this is way easier in Rhino to zoom in this to ability and just trim stuff off, cut it off, and things like that. And it looks like it worked in other cases, so I don't need to do it everywhere. But yeah, it's definitely good to check these, right? And be like, what happened? Is that cut? Is that not cut? What's going on here? Oh, it's a hole inside this whole piece of something, right? So getting a little familiar with the model, or realizing, oh, I'm missing something here. I might need a little arc. So I'm going to make a little arc. Obviously, different arc. Actually, there's several arcs. You take a look. Deformable? That's weird. Where's my cool arc? There we go. Arc from 3 points, my favorite. Basically, I select those 2 points and then I just go boop. And it suddenly looks like a pole going in through that surface. Yeah, I could probably go to each and every one of these and do that, especially if it was my final project I was putting in portfolio. I could even fix up some of the craziness that happened while modeling. I don't have to settle for anything, right? In fact, this is what the person will see. They won't see technically the model. They'll see my drawing and interpretations of that model. So I could fake it all I want. Not that we should fake things, but let's face it, there are going to be some times where you just can't model it. You ran out of time and you've already spent 6 hours trying to model something. Just draw it two-dimensionally when you make 2D, right? Not a big deal, and nobody will honestly know. So, not even myself will look at it and be like, that's accurate and graphic standards, right? And of course, that's what we're always looking for. However, let's get some poche in there. So I'm going to highlight everything, hatch, enter. I'm going to go ahead and select the things that do need to be hatched. Of course, you'll notice that they need to be closed boundaries. If I accidentally click on this outside, holy crap, right? Your computer will freeze and essentially try to hatch the entire space around it. So do be careful. And how to avoid that is, of course, to always click on a closed polyline. So in my case, these are what are getting cut. It does look like I need to finish some of the line work though. That's probably being cut, and cut. And again, I get to decide sort of what is being cut. Looks like it kind of messed up, and again, this is where I'd want to fix it. For the sake of tutorial, I'll kind of just leave it the way it is. Didn't realize that was a floor. That is definitely not a pole. I don't know, maybe it is. Again, I should definitely verify, but for the sake of tutorial, let's just continue. And these might not actually be cut, but for the sake of tutorial and so that I have something to show you, let's go ahead and do that. But yeah, let's show you at least what happens real quick if I accidentally click on something I don't want to click on. So I'll take the whole thing, if I hatch, and let's say I accidentally click on the background. Yeah, obviously it's going to be like, hey, did you mean the whole thing? And it's like, no, I did not mean the whole thing. So be very careful where you're clicking with that boundary. But these are looking pretty good. I could also even put a scale figure in here. So I don't think I've shown you guys this yet. There we go. We won't go to YouTube today. I know I've shown you guys Noun Project, but there's also Pimp My Drawings. Be very careful. Apparently putting pimpmydrawlean.com is way different than pimpmydrawleans.com. So, or sorry, pimpmydrawlean, not plural. For some reason, if you type it in plural, it goes somewhere else. Won't even mention it. But yeah, pimpmydrawlean.com. I should probably be sponsored by them as well. This actually happens to be an architect student who went ahead and just drew a bunch of scale figures, traced literally Bruce Lee, and let's face it, Bernie Sanders. and is making a killing off of it. I don't know about you, but this is where you make money in architecture, right? Is, of course, supplying stuff. Anyway, you should have no issue finding scale figures. I mean, this guy's even doing a dab. Anyway, people sitting down, people going upstairs, maybe holding a cell phone, skateboarding, got a dog on him, old man versus young man from behind, got Santa Claus going on. Anyway, what I'm trying to say is there should be no issue, of course, populating this with context, which is really what I'm looking for. You know, guy playing guitar at the very top, even the Beatles involved. I mean, shoot. Anyway, obviously we don't have any streets, so we shouldn't see any of the Beatles crossing. But for the sake of the tutorial, let's go ahead and put these into Illustrator and get going. Obviously, I'm going to go to Illustrator and then I'm going to go to Photoshop. Some of us already know about my workflow, but for those who don't, it is being recorded. So let's go ahead and save these separately, just because they'll be on two separate pages. I could put this in one Illustrator file, but since I might be going to Photoshop, I'm just going to isolate them. And for the sake of the assignment, it's saying that they can all go on separate 11x17s anyway, so that seems good. So I'm going to go ahead and unlock, just in case I have anything locked in place. Go ahead and select, File, Export Selected. And as we know, since we have some updated versions of Illustrator, we can go ahead and save it as an Illustrator file. However, a DWG also works very well, right? And saves our layers. So be wary. So I'm going to just say floor plan test. Or actually, in my case, I think this is the section. And we'll save it to our desktop. And preserve model scale would be hilarious. Let's do that. So 1 foot equals 1 inch. No, it's actually 4 feet equals 1 inch. So boom, just scaled like that. Let's do it again. I can actually just hit spacebar and it'll do that command again. So floor plan, test, Illustrator file, export. It'll even keep that same setting, so 4 feet in units will equal 1 inch for real. Export. And we'll go ahead and minimize that just in case we messed up. And go ahead and open those. We'll start off with our section, that way I can at least show you the workflow to Photoshop. And we'll go ahead and get our section test. Now, we were kind of off the origin point, so it might be out in the middle of nowhere, but we shall find out. Sweet, and it's at the correct scale. Now, I do need to change my paper size first, so I'm going to go to File, Document Setup, and Edit Artboards. I actually think there was a student the other day who taught me an easier way, but you know, I'm an old man stuck in my ways. So again, I like to click on them and dial them in specifically. That way I kind of know too. I don't know, I'm traumatized by some of my work. You don't understand, you do the exact same thing in a firm, right? You make scale drawings, you do these things, and then you have a partner come by and they actually check it. You know, they'll come by with a scale and go, this ain't to scale, and you'll be like, oh shit, I'm gonna get fired, and you know, all this different stuff. So again, there's a reason why we practice like this, and why you even start developing kind of your tried and true ways. Like, even though there are better ways, sometimes you're just more comfortable, right? Doing it the way that you know that works. So definitely nothing wrong with that. However, keep in mind, we used to also say, how many clicks did it take? Right, and be like, bro, this took 1,000 clicks, and you're like, whoa, dude, you're doing it wrong. I did the same thing for about 500 clicks, and you're like, bro, that's half the time, right? So do keep in mind, time is money eventually. However, you know, I still know some professors who still right-click and copy and paste, right? You know, instead of just Command-C and Command-V. So we all have our ways. So let's go ahead and line up this drawing. Dial it in perfectly. Good thing I have that wonderful 11x17 border to help me out, and lock it into place. Now it looks like I do have some leftover lines that I didn't need, so I'm going to go ahead and take care of those. Again, even the deleting the line process in Illustrator is difficult, but that's looking pretty good. Obviously, I just need to change some line weights before I put it into Photoshop, because I cannot change the line weights in Photoshop. So I'm going to go ahead and do that first. Click on my layers. The new icons give me every time. Oh yeah, layers. However, it doesn't look like my layers actually came in through, right? It looks like it definitely got every piece, but not the end of the world. However, you know, if your layers happen to be colored, here's a tip, right? Just in case you accidentally did the same thing I did and you were unorganized, so you have all the same, right? This is definitely what not to do, right? What not to do for red. Anyway, so in my case, since I do have colors, I can go to select, same, and I can go to appearance or say stroke color. So for instance, maybe all of that layer is orange or brown or all the same color, and I'm good because, well, they're not layered, but they do have different colors. So I can go to select, same, color, or fill opacity, or lots of things actually. So very useful tool is of course the select tool, same, and in my case the stroke color. That way I can change it to obviously something more gray tone, and of course change its thickness as well. So in my case, maybe a 0.45, and it's definitely not looking horrible, right? Obviously I should have been much more careful about organizing my layers, and maybe should have just exported as a DWG. I don't know, some computers, they do export different things from Rhino, so definitely not a one-trick pony, right? There's definitely like 12 different things that can come out of every one of these computers. So again, I can take all that poche. In my case, I'm going to select the same fill color. That way it gets all those fills, right? I'm going to, of course, change that to actually a much, something more like that. Actually prints a lot better and reveals as poche a lot better too. One could argue that I'm probably cutting through this as well. So I'm just going to fake it till I make it. And basically just say, well, all of this at the bottom is being cut. So I can either say even just copy one of these and hold Option, or if I'm on Windows, I can hold Alt and just make a copy of something real quick. Since I know it's the same shape and a rectangle, I'm just going to assume that I'm cutting through the topography as such, right? However, I'd want to dial this, of course, a lot better with line weights. I'd want to get stuff that is closer to me. I'd want to get the scale figures dialed in just right, so on and so forth. But for the sake of the tutorial, I'm ready to basically drag this into Photoshop and get started, right? But what's nice is now I have this wonderful, I like to call it a coloring book, because that's kind of essentially what it is, and essentially what I'll be doing in Photoshop to renderize some of this information. So I may want a sky in there. Obviously, maybe I want realistic scale figures and so on. I might want to calculate the shade and shadow, right, and put a shade and shadow layer on this. And again, that might be a very useful rendering that I can produce, right, very simply. Do I ever have to calculate shadows anymore? The answer is no, right? I do have the ability to render and of course trace those as well, as some of you that are much more familiar with my Graphics 2 course in the summer, where we do that. Anyway, let's go ahead and take this right into Photoshop. So I'm ready to go. I've already got my line weight settled. I'm essentially just going to go to Photoshop. Now obviously I need to make a new file. In my case, 11 by 17 portrait. So go ahead and flip those. Actually, I think we could just flip it like that, but type it in is also good. So again, I do want to make sure that I am starting off with the right piece of paper. Very often, especially if I don't have a dual screen, I kind of have to make these smaller, or at least half size. I can use my space bar to, of course, maneuver and zoom out, and quite literally just drag it right in. So it'll take a second, but it should be, of course, the exact same size and come in as a vector smart object. That way when I press enter and I zoom in, the pixelation will come, right? And this is again why we do that step in Illustrator first. So I do like to explain this just, you know, at least a little bit more detail, because I don't get to do it so much in my rotation. But clearly there is no such thing as pixelation in Illustrator versus pixelation in Photoshop. Some of you guys actually wonder still to this day, like, why are some of my imagery pixelated, right? And of course, well, if you do it in Photoshop, it has to be pixelated because it's a raster program. Whereas Illustrator is, of course, a vector program. It's always going to print a lot straighter. Now, don't get me wrong, the printer even prints in pixels, so it is even determined on the printer as well. So, can't escape it, right? But just in case you were never pointed that out. However, there are some things that we can do to, of course, and that's very zoomed in. We'll never see that. Of course, this is 300 DPI, so you should be good. However, if you increase the DPI, it also increases the size of the image, but makes it a much more clear image, very closer to this Illustrator file. So I'm going to go ahead and minimize that, and let's go ahead and start putting some backgrounds or some more information, right? So I don't know, at first I'm going to go ahead and make a new layer. I'm going to put some sky in there, maybe get a tree in there, so maybe make a tree layer. And we'll start off with those two for now. I am nearing the end of this long tutorial, so let's at least get the tree and sky in there, and I'll go ahead and continue from here next time. But it should be definitely enough to get us started and actually produce these floor plans and sections. Obviously, we still have 3 weeks, so we're good on time. Let's go ahead and put a background. Right, so first things first, the way these layers work are just like any other layer program. So if I put this layer on top, it's of course going to be in the foreground. And if I put it towards the back or at the bottom, it will be towards the background. So in my case, I do want the sky in the back. And I could do two things. I can either just brush in a sky, you know, not a big deal. Right click on the color, get it, yeah, you know, most skies are blue, you know, kind of a soft blue in there. I like to hit B for brush and really just kind of draw the sky. Usually I'll put a light opacity, maybe like 52 or 42. Can't really change the flow much. If you right click, you can of course change the hardness. I keep the hardness at 0 for my skies and usually use a big stroke. Well, let me change that for some reason. Oh, I was touching my touchpad. That's really weird. Well, let me change it. Oh, there we go. Again, probably a screen recording anomaly, but yeah, go ahead and change the pixel size and brush that right in. I like to be really whimsical with it. That way it actually looks more like a cloud. Yeah, it looks like these soft, you know, clouds are weird. They kind of do random things, so I like to try and be as random as possible. Obviously, I'm covering my architecture a little bit, so of course I'll show you how to remove that. Usually, the sky gets a little bit darker towards the bottom. Maybe even has like a little bit of orange or purple to it. So I don't know, maybe it's a sunset. Maybe get a little orange in there. Go with a bigger aperture. And I'm just gonna like fuzz it in there. Right, just kind of blend it up. Get fancy, get Bob Ross with it, right? There are no mistakes, just happy accidents. But let's go ahead and take that vector object and use it. So in my case, I can use the magic wand tool, or I could trace this whole thing. I think the magic wand tool is going to be a little easier in our case. So I'm going to go to my magic wand, which is W. I need to make sure that I'm on my vector smart object and click on that background. And of course in the recording, you should be able to see that it starts to go around most of these objects. Now, in some cases, you know, I might have to hold the shift bar and add to that selection. So for instance, obviously I want to get the sky through these bars. So yeah, I'm gonna have to click through all of these little polygonal lines. I could also just get the sky inside of there. Probably wouldn't even notice the difference, but I do want to show you at least how you would do it. And it looks like it's getting that part for us, so we're good there. However, next thing I'll do is, well, I need this part, right, of the sky. So I need to remove the opposite part. So in my case, I'll right click, I'll select the inverse, so it'll select the opposite of whatever I selected. I'll click on my sky layer, and of course erase what I don't need. So obviously I don't need any of the sky inside of my architecture. So it's going to go ahead and erase actually everything I don't need. Now I accidentally got some parts that I do need, so maybe I actually add to my selection. I can still do that. So I go back to my vector, I hit W for my magic wand tool, and I right click and make sure that it's on magic wand tool. I can select back to my inverse, just because I guess I could click from here, but that is kind of confusing. And I just hold shift and make sure that I add to that selection, and I make sure to say oops, right? But it looks like I definitely have a better selection. So again, right click, select inverse. Sorry how confusing that is, but I did want to save myself before I erased. That way I didn't get rid of the sky that I want. Obviously I want to remove it from the ground and the pieces of the architecture. So there's of course one way to do it. Now after I've done it one way, I essentially have that layer saved, right? And it kind of just is what it is, right? That's the sky layer, right? And it has missing architecture. However, what's really cool is, well, maybe I want a real sky. So let's go ahead and get a real sky. We'll go to Google Images. Now what the trick here is actually the wording. Now you can type in sky, but really what happens that you should type is sky texture or sky material. That texture or material is actually really what controls what we want. So maybe we want something a little bit more realistic. We kind of want to take it back. I don't know, maybe we couldn't get the colors right, so let's go with a sunset. And let's go ahead and go with that. So I can click on the image itself. Obviously I need to actually right click and open this one or this image in a new tab. That way I can just get the image. Perfect. I'll go ahead and drag it to my desktop because it's a Mac. I'm pretty sure you can do that in Windows, but it depends on your browser. Now in my case I need that image, so again I can just drag it on here, or file, import, or place, linked, or embedded. In my case it doesn't really matter because I'm going to erase it and rasterize it anyway. So go to my desktop, get that image, I think that's the one. And maybe we'll just end with the sky from here, because honestly once you know how to put the sky in, you can really put in any material. However, that's looking pretty small. So let's make that a little bit bigger, get those rich colors at the bottom. I'm going to go ahead and press enter. It's going to start looking a little bit better. I'm going to put that behind my sky layer so I can figure out exactly what I need. So let's go ahead and mask this sky layer. So you can actually right click. You can do a couple of things. You can mask all objects, right? And it's going to create this this mask for us that we can basically use. Right, so this little guy right here, you can actually copy these or delete them, or you can use them as a mask layer. Anyway, just wanted to show you that just in case you are ready for that advanced level. Go ahead and right click and try out some mask layers. However, for my D2 guys, we can go ahead and just remove, again like we just did. So remove from this layer what we don't need. So in my case I don't have to trace all that again. I can hit magic wand tool, select, and it selects it all magically for me again. Now it does miss some of these pieces, so I may need to sort of add that in, and of course that's coming from my brush. So again, why you would actually make that mask layer first, because it's going to, well, it's actually going to do the same thing because all of that is white, right? So obviously I'd want to go the other way. Anyway, let's go ahead and just for the sake of tutorial remove it. So magic wand, select, I'll go back to this one and delete it. So I may actually need to select the inverse, but should be okay. It's going to say, hey, it's not rasterized. That's all right. Obviously, let's go ahead and remove the sky. Oh, let's actually keep that blue part because I know I'll need it. But yes, we'll go ahead and remove everything we don't need. And that's looking pretty sweet. Obviously, I'll get rid of the other sky we made and just keep this one. Nice. However, the sky is very rich and very saturated. So I'm going to show you the tricks of the trade. Basically, you go to filter, you go to blur, and here's the secret, guys. Gaussian blur. That's of course actually refraction blur that is of course used for the sky. And what's nice is once you apply it to your sky layer, it's going to start to blur it out a little bit. It's going to make it look like it's falling towards the back. I'm going to go ahead and press OK. And it's still kind of rich, right? Rich in detail, right? Still saturated. So again, I can go to Image, Adjustments, Vibrance. What I like to do is give it 100% vibrance. Usually makes it very saturated. And then take away the saturation, usually to about -32 or even more, right? And obviously it's going to really gray out the image. Obviously that's too saturated or too less saturated. And again, I know the printer is going to actually add some color to that for me, so I may go dramatic on this one. Give it kind of that Instagram feel. But yeah, obviously we're getting somewhere. Now, clearly I need to maybe re-vector my magic wand tool because I'm missing some sky there. But it's starting to look pretty realistic. Once I got some people in here, once I maybe got some trees and context in the back, we'll obviously talk about that next time. But I'll go ahead and end it here for today. Unless there are some specific Photoshop questions that maybe you just had a question about, it could be unrelated. Please ask them now because, again, somebody might have that exact same question. Any of my D4 guys maybe missed something in that D3 rotation that you just always had an itching question about? Jackie, anything new about Photoshop? Fair enough. We'll end it there.